In this video, we're going to talk about float level height, adjusting the floats, and then also the clear tube method so you can verify the fuel level in the carburetor. Okay, let's do a little bit of whiteboard action here. And I want to mention before I get into this, if you have a plastic float, 100% plastic, including the little tang, it is a non-adjustable float, okay? If it's off, buy a new float, okay? So this adjustment pertains to brass floats or anything with a metal tang that you can manipulate. Okay, but let's quickly draw a carburetor. That's a sorry looking carburetor, but anyway. Okay, so float level, there's some level of fuel that is required by the carburetor manufacturer. Okay, so this is the float level, and then the float height is basically, here's your float in here, and here's your pivot point. Okay, so the float height is measured from here to the gasket mating surface. Always to the gasket mating surface. Now the carbs I'm working on, the CB750 carbs, it had in the manual, it measured it to like a ridge. So the gasket actually sits like in here. Okay, so clearly in the service manual, it wanted it here versus the gasket mating surface. So that's why I'm doing the clear tube method to just check and make sure I'm good. But anyway, so that's the float height. And it's usually measured with the carburetor upside down. I'll show you in the video. But the fuel level should always be 1 to 2 millimeters below the gasket mating surface. Okay, so let's say you adjust the float, then you do the clear tube method. This is where your fuel level should be. Now, what happens if your fuel level's too high or too low? Well, since this is drawn in by vacuum or a pressure difference, if it's higher, the carburetor, it's easier for the fuel to get sucked in to the engine. So it could technically run richer. If it's lower, it could run leaner, okay? I hear people messing around with float height to get things to run right or whatever. I usually set it to what the factory recommends or the service manual recommends, and I ended up here. I never have to touch it. I don't ever fuss with this or alter it to get a desired outcome. I just never do that. Okay, so here's the, okay, let me erase that. All right, so here's the clear tube method. Most carburetors have a drain screw, or there might be an overflow tube in here. You know, the overflow tube comes something like that. You know, I'm just drawing the channel here. If the float level's too high, the fuel level's too high, it'll trickle down and out into the ground or whatever. But anyway, some carburetors have a screw right in here, right? So if we take the screw out, let me just get rid of this overflow tube. We don't need it for this example. Okay, if we take that out and we jam a hose in here and just have a hose leading up like that, it will also fill with fluid or fuel to the level, right? It's going to just drain in here and it's going to go to the same level. So then we can visually inspect it outside the carburetor. So we just go like this, and it should be 1 to 2 millimeters. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's go over to the bench. We'll first adjust it, and then we will check it with this, and that's pretty much it. Okay, now to check the float level. Now, if you look at it in the manual, it looks like they're using this surface here with the cutout. Okay, so from this surface right here to the top here. Okay, and it's supposed to be 26 millimeters. Now, normally it's to the gasket mating surface, so it actually would be the surface here. Okay, but you can clearly see that they're using this surface in the service manual. Okay, so let's go ahead and check this. All right, camera's in my way here a little bit. Okay, so it's a little high. Okay, so what I have to do is bend the tang a little bit, which you can see right in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick the screwdriver in here. Actually, let me get a better camera angle and you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so the float has to come down a little bit, so this tang has to come up. So if you take a skinny screwdriver, just come in here and gently pry that guy up. Okay, so let's see where we're at. Okay, I just went a little too much. And it looks like the float is a little crooked. What you can do is I'm going to push this one down and this one up. You know, these things get all jacked up over time. Okay, I'm just hitting this one. This one needs to come up a little bit. I am very close to that one. And this one I'm like dead nuts on. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. So you have to manipulate that tang in order to get the right float height. Okay, so what I've done now is we got the carb in a vise. It's level. I removed the drain screw or plug at the bottom here. I got a piece of hose here that I can see through. I nipped it to a point, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jam it in these threads here, okay? And hopefully it won't leak too bad. All right, and then what we'll do is we will just hold it. Will it stay? All right, so we'll be able to see the fuel level there. Okay, on this side here, I got the fuel joint T. We'll push that in, and then I got a little silicone plug that will just plug right there, and then we will hook up a fuel tank to that port there. All right, so here's my fuel tank. I'll just slide this guy on here. All right, so when I open the fuel, you're going to see the fuel level come up, and it's going to stop, and we'll record where it is. All right, my freaking on-off valve here is leaking like crazy. We are right there, so we're about a millimeter or two below the gasket surface. This fuel here is because this thing's freaking spilling all over the place. But anyway, so that's good. That's where we want to be, about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters below the gasket surface. That's normally where a float level should be.